The last train screeched away into the dark plains, leaving behind a lonely figure on the weathered depot bench. Rain fell soft and cold, soaking through Clara's thin dress as she clutched a small suitcase, everything she owned in the world. Her father had promised to return for her, but that promise had vanished with the smoke of the departing locomotive. The depot lantern flickered weakly, and for the first time in years, Clara whispered to the night, "I don't think anyone's coming." The town had gone quiet long before midnight. The wind sighed across the tracks, carrying the scent of coal and sorrow. Clara pulled her shawl tighter, staring at her reflection in the puddle below her boots. The girl she saw looked tired, not the dreamer who'd left home full of hope. "You'll find work, maybe even a place to belong," her father had said before leaving to look for one. But hours turned to days, and the depot became her only home. By the third night, hunger gnawed at her ribs like a forgotten secret. She'd tried sweeping the floor of the general store for scraps, but even that kindness ran dry. The station master muttered she was bad luck. A girl left behind was a sign of misfortune. So Clara sat outside instead, whispering prayers that no one answered, watching trains pass through carrying other people's tomorrows. A storm rolled in from the west. Thunder cracked the sky as she sought shelter beneath the depot's awning. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the biscuit in her pocket, the last one. Just then, she heard boots crunching on the gravel, slow, heavy steps that stopped near her feet. She looked up, heart leaping, and saw a shadow wearing a wide-brimmed hat dripping with rain. "Ma'am," the man said, his voice deep and rough like gravel. "You're fixin' to freeze sittin' out here." Clara swallowed hard, unsure whether to answer. Men who wandered at night in these parts were often trouble. But something in his tone, gentle, cautious, made her stay. "I'm waiting for someone," she managed. He studied her quietly, then looked at the empty tracks. "Darlin', I think that someone already left." His name was Luke Carver, a cowboy passing through after driving cattle north. He offered her a piece of jerky from his saddlebag, and though pride made her hesitate, hunger made her accept. "Ain't much, but it's warm," he said. She ate in silence while the rain drummed above them. He didn't pry, didn't ask for her story. Instead, he just sat near, sharing the quiet like it was something sacred. When dawn broke, the light revealed his face, weathered but kind, with eyes the color of worn denim. He told her he was heading back to his ranch a day's ride west, alone since his brother left for war. "Could use an extra hand," he said softly. "Got chickens need feedin', fence needs mending. You'd earn your keep." Clara blinked, unsure whether to trust him. The world had taught her that kindness often came with a price. Still, something about Luke's presence felt different. He didn't look at her with pity or hunger, just understanding. She told him about her father, about waiting 3 weeks with no word, no letter. Luke's jaw tightened as he listened. "World's full of men who make promises they can't keep," he said. "But you ain't gotta keep waitin' here." His words stung, but deep down, she knew he was right. That morning, Luke saddled his horse and offered her a ride to town, or farther if she wished. She stood at the platform edge, suitcase in hand, heart pounding. Could she really leave? The depot had been her prison and her home, her only proof that her father once cared. But as she looked down the tracks, empty, endless, she realized staying meant dying slowly. She climbed onto the horse behind him. The journey was quiet at first. Clara clung to the saddle as the plains stretched wide around them, golden under the early sun. Every hoofbeat felt like the pulse of a new beginning, though she didn't dare hope yet. Luke rode steady, occasionally glancing back to make sure she was warm. When he finally spoke, his words were simple, "You remind me of someone who forgot how strong she was." By noon, they reached a fork in the road. One path led to the next town, the other to the ranch. "You sure about this?" Luke asked. Clara stared at the signpost, the wind tugging at her shawl. Going to town meant safety, but also loneliness. Going with him meant risk, but maybe, belonging. She met his eyes and nodded. "I'll help with the chickens," she said quietly. He grinned. Fair trade. The ranch came into view at sunset, a stretch of land framed by cottonwoods and fences that needed fixing. A few horses grazed lazily in the fading light. To Clara, it looked like heaven itself. Luke dismounted and helped her down. "Ain't much," he said. But it's honest. She smiled faintly. For the first time since the depot, she felt the ground beneath her feet was her own. Inside the small wooden house, warmth from the hearth wrapped around her like a forgotten hug. Luke handed her a cup of coffee, his eyes soft but unreadable. "You can stay till you find your way," he said. "No questions asked." She nodded, unable to speak. That night, as she lay in the small bed near the fire, she listened to the wind outside, but it no longer sounded like loneliness. Yet even in safety, doubt whispered in her mind. Would Luke grow tired of her presence? Would he expect something in return? She stared at the flickering firelight, torn between gratitude and fear. The cowboy seemed too kind, too calm for this harsh world. But sometimes, Clara thought, maybe broken souls recognize each other, and find warmth in the ruins. She closed her eyes and drifted to sleep. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch began to feel less like a stranger's land and more like a place that breathed with her presence. Clara woke before dawn, helping Luke feed the animals, mend fences, and plant seeds for spring. She found herself humming again, quiet songs her mother once sang. Luke never said much, but his steady company became the rhythm of her healing. In the silence between them, peace quietly bloomed. One evening, Clara caught Luke staring out toward the horizon, his hat low and shoulders tense. "You thinking of leaving again?" she asked. He shook his head, just remembering. Later that night, he told her about the war, how his brother never came back, how the ranch nearly fell apart. "I thought I'd learn to live alone," he said softly. "Then you showed up, and suddenly the place feels alive again." Clara blinked back tears, unsure how to answer. But peace never lasts long on the frontier. One morning, a stranger rode in, a rail worker with dust on his coat and a telegram in hand. "Looking for a Miss Clara Whitmore," he said. Her heart stopped. The message was short and cruel. Her father had died 3 months ago in a train accident east of Denver. The room fell silent. Luke took off his hat and lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Clara," he murmured. But the words felt hollow in the heavy air. For days, Clara barely spoke. She wandered the ranch like a ghost, her old fears clawing back. "Everyone leaves," she whispered one night by the barn. Luke found her there, tears glistening in the lantern light. "Then I'll stay," he said firmly. She shook her head. "You can't promise that." But Luke stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Maybe not forever, but as long as I can breathe, I'll make sure you're never left behind again." Something in his words broke through the walls she'd built. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry, deep. Shaking sobs that washed away months of waiting and pain. Luke didn't try to stop her. He just stood there, steady as the earth beneath her feet, until her strength returned. When she finally looked up, dawn had painted the world in gold. It felt like a quiet promise. A new beginning was possible. Spring came early that year. The fields around the ranch turned green, and Clara planted a small patch of wildflowers near the fence. She called it the Depot Garden, a place to remember where she'd come from. Luke would watch her work from the porch, pretending to fix his boots while hiding a smile. "You've brought color to this place," he'd say. And she'd laugh, a sound that made the horses lift their heads in surprise. One afternoon, while tending the horses, Luke handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a silver locket, slightly tarnished but engraved with her initials. "Found it in the lost and found drawer at the depot when I went for supplies," he said. "Figured it belonged to someone who needed it back." Clara opened it. Inside was a faded picture of her and her father. Her eyes filled. "I thought this was gone forever." Luke just nodded. "So did I." From that day, something changed between them. The silences were softer, the glances longer. They'd share coffee on the porch and talk about silly things, chickens that refused to lay eggs, storms that came and went too fast. Yet beneath every laugh was an unspoken warmth, something fragile and real. Clara realized she wasn't waiting anymore. She was living, truly living, and the man beside her had taught her how. Then one night, lightning struck the barn. Flames tore through the roof as the animals panicked. Luke ran inside without hesitation, and Clara's scream echoed across the fields. The storm raged, the rain too slow to quench the fire. She watched in horror as he pulled out the horses one by one, coughing through smoke. When he stumbled and fell, She rushed in after him, dragging him to safety with every ounce of strength she had left. By dawn, the barn was ash, but they were alive. Luke's arm was burned, his breathing rough, but his eyes still held that same quiet steadiness. "Told you," he rasped, smiling weakly. "Ain't leavin' you behind." Clara's tears mixed with soot as she held his hand. The fire had taken much, but it had also burned away the last of her fear. From that day, she knew, this was home. Weeks later, neighbors came to help rebuild. Clara worked beside Luke, hammer in hand, laughter on her lips. The new barn rose stronger than before, its beams glinting golden under the sun. "Looks better than the old one," Luke said. "Maybe because we built it together," she replied. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everything unspoken between them finally had a voice. That evening, as the first stars appeared, Luke took her to the hill overlooking the ranch. "You remember that night at the depot?" he asked. "You looked colder than winter itself." Clara smiled softly. "And you looked like trouble." He chuckled. Then, with a shy steadiness, he took her hand. "You think maybe it's time we stopped being two people just trying to survive?" Her breath caught. "What are you asking, Luke?" He smiled. "To stay. Not because you have to, but because you want to." The answer was in her eyes before she spoke. She wrapped her arms around him, the wind swirling through the grass. "I already chose that," she whispered. The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter, as if the universe itself approved. For the first time since the depot, Clara wasn't waiting for someone to return. She'd found the one who never left. Years later, travelers passing the old depot would hear a story of a girl once abandoned who found a home beyond the tracks, with a cowboy who taught her that love doesn't arrive by train. It's built by hand, one sunrise at a time. And every spring, wildflowers bloomed along the ranch fence, bright, defiant, and free. Just like Clara's heart.